Hey, City Center Baptist Church family, it's Pastor Brad coming to you from DDQ headquarters. Digging deeper question number 1 this week asks, as the Apostle Paul wrote Romans, the dreaded Nero was emperor. What was the reason Paul stated in Romans 13:1 for believers to be subject to governing authorities? Our English translations sometimes fail to capture the clear intent of the biblical writers. In Romans 13:1, the Apostle Paul wrote, "Let every person be subject to the governing authorities." In English, this sounds like a suggestion or a recommendation, but in Greek, it is a full command, and it's in the present tense, indicating it is to be obeyed repeatedly. Respecting, honoring, and submitting to ruling authorities is a requirement for all believers. This is especially significant when we consider the historical background when Paul was writing. Do a quick Google search of Emperor Nero and you will be shocked at his arbitrary cruelty and ruthlessness. Nevertheless, Paul urged believers to live in subjection to the current government. Obviously, Paul wasn't advocating turning a blind eye when authorities violate God's word. But as far as possible, believers should seek to be model citizens. In fact, this was one of the main arguments put forth by the early apologists, defenders of the faith, to dissuade the Roman authorities from persecuting Christians. The apologists argued that Christians were moral, law-abiding, and selfless. Why eliminate your best citizens? It had some effect in the early centuries of the church's existence. So what was the reason Paul gave to believers to be subject to the less than perfect government of his day? Romans 13:1 stated the universal principle that God appoints all authority. He alone has the right to do so by virtue of his status as creator, and he alone can bestow it on whomever he chooses. It is a claim coming out of a biblical worldview that God is the sovereign ruler over everything, and that he is in complete charge of all the affairs of his creatures. No one gets into places of leadership and authority without his knowledge and without his approval. This does not mean all authorities are good and should never be questioned, but it does mean God has a purposeful plan he is working out, and he uses all leaders, capable or incompetent, wise or foolish, godly or immoral, to accomplish his ends. We see the same concept affirmed in biblical passages such as Daniel 2:21, where the prophet blessed the God of heaven for revealing King Nebuchadnezzar's dream to him. Daniel praised God because he removes kings and sets them up. In Titus 3, verses 1 and 2, Paul urged Titus to remind his church family on the island of Crete to be submissive to rulers and authorities and to be civil, a trait sorely missing in today's world. And in 1 Peter 2, verses 13 to 16, Peter told his readers to be subject to human authorities because it was God's will that believers be examples to unbelievers. Their godliness would help silence any criticism that might be leveled at Christ due to the unruly lives of believers. So, our calling remains the same. Honor others, including those in government over us. Seek to be model citizens to highlight the difference Christ makes in our lives. And trust God to govern those who govern us so that his sovereign plan will be achieved. This has been Pastor Brad coming to you from DDQ headquarters.